everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the new movie, The Book of Clarence. I really liked Lakeith Stanfield in Atlanta, and I've honestly been trying to figure out if I like him in anything else ever since then. So I wanted to check this movie out. The synopsis is as follows. A down-on-his-luck man struggles to find a better life for his family while fighting to free himself of debt. Captivated by the power and glory of the rising Messiah, he risks everything to carve his own path to a divine life, ultimately discovering that the redemptive power of belief may be his only way out. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. There are a couple questions I wanted to answer before we talk about the plot. 1. This movie is not making fun of the Bible. This movie is simply a fictional story that happens to take place during the time of Jesus. In fact, their portrayal of Jesus is actually pretty respectful. 2, this movie doesn't even try to be biblically accurate. It is a fictional work. If you're a person of faith or you read the Bible, you will recognize certain things, but you'll also recognize them as half-truths kind of pulled from the Bible as source material. That's the way this movie is. Just want to get that out of the way and answer those questions because I've been seeing a lot of those questions online. This movie opens with a picture of Clarence being crucified, so you know that that's where the movie's going. From that point, this movie splits itself into 3 separate books. The first book is the setup. You find Clarence owing a street gang or a bookie money, and he has 30 days to pay them back, otherwise he gets killed. So his first idea to make money is to join the disciples. He himself doesn't believe in God, but he knows that the disciples make money when they perform these miracles or tricks, as Clarence calls them. So that might be a great way to make money. They immediately reject him, and so his next choice is to make himself a Messiah. What follows is really a character journey of Clarence as he faces all of these moral decisions and ultimately makes a lot of personal discoveries and growth along the way. At the beginning of the first book, they set things up, and at the very end, there's a really nice third act having to do with the redemptive arc of Clarence. Everything in between is an absolutely convoluted mess. It seemed like this movie lost sight of its plot right after it set it up and did a bunch of random things until you got to the third book. In addition to that, this movie could not find the happy medium between drama and comedy. And as a result, neither could the audience. It was this awkward in-between of really bad pacing issues and a really unfortunate lack of humor. So while the movie ended well and there was a lot of potential there, it was really boring for almost the whole movie. So for me, plot gets a thumbs down. 2 is family friendliness. The Book of Clarence is rated PG-13. There's a mild to moderate bit of profanity, there's some violence, there's some sensuality, some drug use, and there's a depiction of crucifixion as well. I think it's pretty obvious that this movie is not catered towards children, even though they don't go over the top in any of these areas of the film. So for me, family friendliness gets a thumbs down. 3 is acting and script. Like I said, I've been trying to discover if I like Lakeith Stanfield as an actor or if Atlanta was just a really well-written show. And I think I'm starting to discover that it might be the latter, because his performance really didn't impress me that much. I also really like R.J. Cyler. I really liked him in Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which is still one of my favorite movies. But he's barely in this one. To me, the most interesting acting performances were the cameos near the end of the film. Cameos from the likes of Benedict Cumberbatch and James McAvoy. Just the fact that they were thrown into this movie made it more interesting, and the parts they had they committed to because they're great actors. Other than that, a lot of this movie was just bland. And the same goes for the script. Like I mentioned, this movie could not find the happy medium between humor and drama. And while there were certain gems like, oh, I just got back from street racing Mary Magdalene, that's not most of the movie. Those are very few and far between moments that, if they would have had more of, would have made the movie a lot better. But a lot of the script of this movie was just an absolute mess of useless dialogue and bloated moments and what the frick is going on moments. So for me, acting and script get a thumbs down. 4 is character development. Clarence gets the most character development in this movie by far, and that's because it really is a character journey of his. And it's actually a pretty decent character arc. Other than that, nobody is developed, and I mean nobody. There are interesting characters. Mary Magdalene and her relationship to Clarence and the other characters in this movie. It's super interesting. They never talk about it. Or Barabbas and his certain abilities and the stuff that they kind of hint at in the movie. Super interesting. We never hear about it. And I just think that during all that in-between time at the beginning of book 1 and the end of book 3, all of that stuff would have been way more interesting than what we actually got. In addition to that, there's quite a few characters that make a lot of out-of-character decisions. Like, they just make complete 180s in the same stream of dialogue that they're having. What are we doing? It's just lazy character writing. So for me, character development gets a 50-50. 5 is visuals and CGI. There are a handful of creative moments in this movie that I actually liked. At certain times they felt out of place because this movie couldn't figure out what it wanted to be. Moments like when Clarence thinks of something, a light bulb appears above his head. I love that! Or when certain people are smoking and getting high, they're all moving in this place like they're in space. I love really quirky and niche visuals like that, and if this movie had figured itself out, I think it would have been amazing. In addition to that, they do depict the crucifixion and the walk to crucifixion. And honestly, as a person of faith, it's hard not to get emotional during a scene like that. But they do a good job portraying that. So for me, visuals and CGI, I get a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. The Book of Clarence is 2 hours and 9 minutes long. But because of all of the pacing issues and lack of pretty much everything else, this movie felt so long. And I found myself struggling to stay awake. This movie had a ton of potential in it, which is a really unfortunate thing because it could have been incredible. But there were quite a few glaring issues that made it honestly a really boring and unfunny movie to watch. So for me, rewatchability gets a thumbs down. With all these areas considered, I have to give The Book of Clarence a 3 out of 10. This movie had interesting visual dynamics in it that I found really enjoyable. And it also had a really good character arc for the character of Clarence, but instead it was squandered by a bunch of useless fluff in the middle, terrible pacing issues, a huge lack of character development with anybody else, and an identity issue of trying to be drama and trying to be comedy, but really failing at both. And you walk away from the movie theater being like, oh my gosh, that movie was so boring, but could it have been something so much better? As someone who really enjoys movies, it's hard to see a movie like this that had really good dynamics in it, but the execution was so bad that you can't escape it. Makes me sad. So with all that in mind, I would not recommend going to see The Book of Clarence in movie theaters. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen The Book of Clarence, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.